What I want to look at is what the New Testament says about circumcision, because it's so confusing to a lot of people unless you come from the solid foundation of the rock of the Torah still stands. If people come out of, denominational Christianity and they've got this idea that maybe the law of God doesn't still stand, which is a preposterous thought in and of itself, but if they've got this, then when they read certain things in the New Testament, they misunderstand them. So what I want to do is do this so that anyone coming from that background understands completely what's being said. Galatians 5, 2-4. See, I, Shaul, that's Paul, okay? I, Shaul, say to you that if you become circumcised, Messiah shall be of no use to you, okay? And I witness again to every man being circumcised that he is a debtor to do the entire Torah. Sounds like Paul doesn't think we should get circumcised, doesn't it? If you read this. The context of it is revealed in the verse afterwards. You who are justified by Torah have severed yourself from Messiah. So, he's talking to those who are to be justified by works. Again, think of the apprentices again, one who's justified by works, saying, if you're in that position and you're looking for your justification from the works that you've done and that you've never sinned, you have to do the entire law in order for that to be the case. If you are becoming circumcised to be justified by the law, and let's not forget there was this group of people who were going around called the Sect of the Pharisees, which believed in Scripture, okay, and they were going around, they were teaching that in order to be saved, you had to be circumcised, which is exactly why Paul says, no, look, okay, Abraham was not circumcised in the beginning, and he was saved by his faith. He got circumcised as a seal of the righteousness of the faith that he had afterwards. Don't put the cart before the horse, okay? So he's speaking to those people, those who are justified by the Torah. If you've justified yourself from by the Torah, you've severed yourself from Messiah, and Messiah is no use to you. Because why do you need the Messiah? Why do you need the Savior if you've justified yourself by your works already? By doing that, by becoming circumcised to be saved, you're saying, I don't need the Messiah. I don't need to walk in faith. I just need to be circumcised and to make sure that I'm keeping the law, and then I'm all good with God. Which, ironically, is the position that many people have come into recently when they're saying that Yeshua, he was not the Messiah. All we need to do is follow the Torah, and that leads to salvation. They're seeking to be justified by works. Galatians 5, verse 11 says, and I, brothers, if I still proclaim circumcision, so same chapter, okay? Paul tells us that he still preaches circumcision, okay? Why am I still persecuted? He's saying to them, look, you people who want to be justified by the law, you people who are going around saying you've got to be circumcised to be saved, okay? If I'm still preaching circumcision and I'm still saying, get circumcised, why are you persecuting me? It's not by works, it's by faith. Acts 15, 1-5 kind of introduces what's going on here. This group of people says, and certain men came down from Yehudah, okay, from Judah, and were teaching the brothers, unless you are circumcised according to the practice of Moshe, you are unable to be saved. That's a problem. Saying you've got to be circumcised to be saved is very different to saying you've got to walk in faith, and that leads to you getting circumcised. So, when Shaul and Barnabas had no small dispute and dissension with them, they arranged for Shaul, Paul, and Barnabas, and certain others of them to go up to Jerusalem to the apostles and elders about this question. So, being sent on their way by the assembly, they passed through Phoenicia and Shomeron, relating the conversion of the Gentiles, and they were causing great joy to all the brothers. And having arrived in Jerusalem, they were received by the assembly and emissaries or apostles and the elders, and they reported all that Elohim had done with them. Okay, so notice what's going on here. Paul and Barnabas, certain others, go to Jerusalem. They talk about the conversion of the Gentiles. They report all that Elohim had done through them. And some of the believers who belonged to the sect of the Pharisees rose up, saying it is necessary to circumcise them and to command them to keep the Torah of Moshe. So, some of the believers, these were some of the brothers that they were going to, some of the believers in Mashiach. They belonged to the sect of the Pharisees, and this is what they were saying. This exact same narrative is related to us in Galatians 2. Then again, after 14 years, I again went up to Jerusalem with Barnabas, taking Titus along too. Okay, Paul, Barnabas, certain others went up to Jerusalem. And I went up by revelation and laid before them that good news which I proclaim among the Gentiles. Same story. But separately to those who were esteemed, lest somehow I run or had run in vain. But not even Titus, who was with me, though a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. What does this mean? We've just seen this narrative. We get more information about it from Acts 15. These people, these certain people, were saying that you have to be circumcised according to the law of Moshe. Okay, some of the believers saying it is necessary to circumcise them. Even Titus was not compelled to be circumcised. It doesn't mean Titus didn't think that he should get circumcised as part of his walk. What it means is that these people who come up with this lie that you have to be circumcised to be saved, not even Titus was compelled by them to be circumcised. But as for the false brothers, okay, those who believed of the sect of the Pharisees, who taught you had to be circumcised to be saved, sneakily brought in, who sneaked in to spy out our freedom which we have in Messiah Yeshua in order to enslave us. To these we did not yield in subjection, not even for an hour, so that the truth of the good news remains in you. So people like to take these things out of context, not understand what was actually going on, say, look, even Titus wasn't circumcised. He wasn't compelled to be circumcised by these false brethren. That's the full story. Acts 15, 19 to 21 shows us the sentence of the Jerusalem Council, what they actually said when they went up with this question to them. This is Peter speaking. He says, therefore I judge that we should not trouble those from among the Gentiles who are turning to Elohim. Sorry, James speaking. But that we write to them to abstain from the defilements of idols and from whoring and from what is strangled and from blood. Okay, so these people, these Gentiles that you go into, you're bringing the good news to them. Don't make it difficult when they're turning to Elohim. Tell them these four things from the Torah. Okay, these are the four things that are most important to tell them. As long as they're doing that, it's all good. Because then, for from ancient generations, Moshe has in every city those proclaiming him, being read in the congregations every Sabbath. This was his reasoning. Tell them these four things, then they'll go to the congregations every Sabbath and they'll learn the rest of Moses. He wasn't saying the rest of Moses is not important. He's saying you're saved by faith. You come to the congregation every Sabbath. You hear the law of Moses being preached. Then you do those things. That's the order. Don't make it difficult for them. Don't go with the Torah and say, oh yeah, there's a load of things here that you'll need to be doing if you're going to be saved by this Messiah. That's not going to work. They're saved by their faith, and then their faith causes them to do these things as they learn of them. Acts 16, 1 to 3 says, and he came to Derbe and Lystra, and see, a certain disciple was there, named Timothy, the son of a certain Yehudite woman, a Jewish woman who believed, but his father was Greek, who was well spoken of by the brothers who were at Lystra and Iconium. Shaul, Paul, wished to have this one go with him. And he took him and circumcised him because of the Yehudim who were in those places, for they all knew that his father was a Greek. He was like, come on, Timothy, you've not got circumcised yet. This is important. If we're going to go to these people and proclaim to them, these people who are saying that I don't keep the law, okay, we need to show them that we walk correctly, but that faith comes before. This is not an excuse to not get circumcised for a period of time, okay? This is just simply Paul saying, no, this is important. We're going now. Before we go, we're getting you circumcised. 1 Corinthians 7:18, this is probably the most difficult one for people to understand. Was anyone called while circumcised? Let him not become uncircumcised. Was anyone called while uncircumcised? Let him not be circumcised. So it sounds like it's saying, look, if you were called when you were circumcised, don't become uncircumcised. And if you were called when you were uncircumcised, don't become circumcised. Problem, if you were called when you were circumcised, how would you become uncircumcised? Bizarre, isn't it? I want you to uncircumcise me, please. This is what's going on here. We need to read it in the Greek. Okay? Trying to remember how to pronounce these. Epispasto. This is this word here. I'm learning Greek at the moment. Okay? Epispasto. That's the word for uncircumcised here. Whereas the word for uncircumcised here is acroboustia. Okay? Two different words. So it's not saying if you are called when you're circumcised, don't become epispasto. If you're called when you are epispasto, let him not become circumcised. Okay, it's not the same thing. So we need to understand what these two words mean, because the translators of this version of the Bible have a doctrinal bias that we're to not get circumcised. So they've just translated it in both ways. This word, translated as uncircumcised here, means drawn in. Okay? This word means uncircumcised. Okay, so this is how it should read. Was anyone called while circumcised? Let him not become drawn in. What was the context of this? The false brethren were going up telling you that you have to be circumcised to be saved. He's saying, okay, if you are circumcised, don't be drawn in. Don't be drawn into this argument because you're already circumcised and start saying, yeah, maybe people should be circumcised. Okay? Is anyone called while uncircumcised? Let him not be circumcised. Okay? Why? Because of this argument. Because they're going and saying you've got to be circumcised to be saved. Don't be compelled to be circumcised, just like Titus wasn't compelled to be circumcised. But the context is important by this argument that they were making. The circumcision is naught and the uncircumcision is naught, but the guarding of the commandments of Elohim does matter. So what it's saying is, look, if you're just a pagan out in the world and you've been circumcised, it's not going to save you. If you're uncircumcised but you have faith in Yahuwah, that's fine, okay? The important thing is that you guard the commands of Elohim, that you're doing it for that reason. You're doing it because of faith in his word, because he says to do it. We can see this. It's phrased in different ways throughout the New Testament. Exactly the same example is given. Galatians 6:15, for in Messiah, Yeshua, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision has any strength. Okay, because he's dealing with this argument where they're saying you've got to be circumcised. He's saying, look, that in itself isn't going to have any strength. The thing that has strength is that you are a renewed creature. Okay? That's what has strength. Keeping the commandments of Elohim. You're a renewed creature who's born according to the newness of life, who keeps the commandments. That's important. If you haven't got that, it doesn't matter if you're circumcised or if you're not circumcised. Galatians 5:6, for in Messiah Yeshua neither circumcision nor uncircumcision has any strength, but faith working through love. Okay, that you've done it by faith. That's what's important. Okay, the fact that you're circumcised or not doesn't matter. Got no strength, no power over you at all. If you've done it in faith though, if you've done it to keep the commandments and you've done it because you're a renewed creature, that's what's important. Romans 2:25-29 says, for circumcision indeed profits, okay, if you practice Torah. Exactly the same thing. Okay, circumcision, uncircumcision is nothing unless you've done it by faith. Circumcision indeed profits if you practice the Torah. But if you are a transgressor of the Torah, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. In God's eyes, it doesn't matter if you're breaking the Torah. It doesn't matter if you're circumcised or not. So if an uncircumcised one watches over the righteousness of the Torah, shall not his uncircumcision be reckoned as circumcision? In God's eyes, if you're keeping the Torah, your uncircumcision doesn't matter whether you're uncircumcised at that point in time. If you've got the faith that would lead you to become circumcised, that's what's really important. God looks at your heart. And the uncircumcised by nature who perfects the Torah shall judge you, who notwithstanding letter and circumcision are a transgressor of the Torah. In other words, okay, someone who is uncircumcised, but they keep the Torah, they're going to judge you who has got the letter of the Torah and the circumcision. You're doing these things by the letter, but you are actually a transgressor of the Torah, your circumcision becomes uncircumcision in God's eyes because you break the Torah. It doesn't matter if you're a Jew and you've got the law and you've become circumcised and stuff. That means nothing. For he is not a Yehudite, a Jew, who is so outwardly. That doesn't matter. You know, you going around with your kippah on and all of the rest of it, all your Jewish garb, and you're circumcised. That doesn't make you one of the seed of Abraham. He is not a Yehudite who is one so outwardly. Neither is circumcision that which is outward in the flesh. But a Yehudite is he who is so inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, in spirit, not in letter, whose praise is not from men, but from Elohim. Okay, so in spirit, you're walking in faith. Okay, the circumcision is of the heart. That's not to say that the circumcision of the flesh will not follow your heart being circumcised and realizing I need to follow these commandments, saying this is what makes you one of the seed of Abraham in his eyes. And we can see circumcision of the heart isn't just a thing that supersedes circumcision of the flesh. And see that in Deuteronomy 10:12-16. Okay? Now, Yisrael, what is Yehovah your Elohim asking of you? But to fear Yehovah your Elohim, to walk in his ways, to love him, to serve Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, to walk in faith. To guard the commandments of Yehovah and his laws, which I command you today for your good. See, the heavens and the heaven of heavens belong to Yehovah your Elohim, also the earth with all that is in it. Yehovah delighted only in your fathers to love them, and he chose their seed and after them, you above all peoples as it is today. Okay, so this walk by faith. Keep all of the commandments. And you shall circumcise the foreskin of your heart and harden your neck no more. That's what it is to circumcise your heart. So in Deuteronomy, they were told to circumcise the foreskin of the heart, because it just means to submit yourself to God. We can see that in Jeremiah 6:10. It says, to whom shall I speak and give warning so that they hear? See, their ear is uncircumcised. So we're to have our ear circumcised as well. We're to submit to Yehovah. And they are unable to listen. See, the word of Yehovah is a reproach to them. They do not delight in it. So if you've got an uncircumcised heart, you've got an uncircumcised ear, then you will not become circumcised in the flesh. Acts 7:51 says, you stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears. That's what it is. Okay? It's not some new fantastic Christian doctrine that's come along. Now we're circumcised in the heart. And that would mean that we will not follow the law of God. What? Ezekiel 44 verse 9 says, thus said the Master Yehovah, no son of a foreigner uncircumcised in heart or uncircumcised in flesh comes into my set-apart place. Okay, this is during the millennium. You've got to be circumcised in heart and circumcised in flesh. Okay? Romans 4:9-12, we looked at these verses before. Just as we're coming to the end of circumcision, since we're talking about Abraham, we'll look at how it pertained to Abraham. Is this blessing then upon the circumcised only, or upon the uncircumcised? For we affirm faith was reckoned unto Abraham for righteousness. How then was it reckoned? Being in circumcision or uncircumcision? Not in circumcision, but in uncircumcision. That's how faith is reckoned to us. And he received the sign of circumcision, a seal of the righteousness of the faith while in uncircumcision, for him to be a father of all those believing through uncircumcision for righteousness to be reckoned to them also, and the father of circumcision to those who are not only of the circumcision, not only of the Jews. Okay, he's a father of circumcision to us. We look to him and say, what did Abraham do? Faith was accounted to him as righteousness. He got circumcised. I'm going to get circumcised.